Now to that breaking news on the humanitarian crisis on our southern border. White House now asking Congress for billions in emergency funding to deal with the record surge of unaccompanied children from Central America and for the legal power to deport those children more quickly. We'll hear from a mayor on the front lines in a moment after this report from ABC's Jim Avila.
It's a double-barreled breach of the southwest border. Waves of unaccompanied children, 52,000 of them so far, and at the same time, moms from Central America hand-carrying their children across the border.
Do not send your children to the borders. If they do make it, they'll get sent back.
For this week, Jim Avila, ABC News, McAllen, Texas.
Hi, this is Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of Antioch Assembly Church located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you today. Today we're going to talk about the illegal immigration deception, and most of you have probably been following it in the news that this big story about how people that have been coming over the border from Mexico illegally are being detained. Their families are being separated. The children are being detained and separated from their parents. And, the press is making this out to be a very tragic event, which it is to a certain extent. But I want us to dig a little bit deeper into this. If you've been following the 2019 movement, the videos and the talks, the teachings, and the writings that we've been doing, we're basically unpeeling that onion that is the New World Order. And the strategy that's been employed to oppress us, to keep us down, to separate us, to divide us, and to enslave us, both mentally and physically, for some time now. And so this is just one of the many strategies that the New World Order globalists are using, have employed. First and foremost, they use the mainstream media. So the mainstream media is an extension of the agenda of the New World Order. And so the narrative that they push is one to help them to accomplish their goal, which is a one world governmental system. With that being said, one of the things that they're trying to do is they're trying to paint this policy of separating families and detaining children of illegal immigrants as President Trump's policy. And that's simply not the case. The current policy, the laws that are on the books right now, were signed in 2008 by President George W. Bush. It was upheld by the Obama administration, and President Obama even went to Congress to ask for an allocation of $2 billion to help to uphold these laws that were on the books. And I'm going to share some videos with you that President Obama actually is stated as saying that don't bring your children to the border. There's so many different reasons why this is a bad idea. And as a nation, we have traditionally, our laws say that if a parent or a guardian places a child in danger, then the state and the county or the county government comes in and takes the child from that family and holds on to the child. They don't get the child back. And so this is the same thing. And so not only is illegal immigration illegal, but it's very dangerous. Back in 1993, I was in the United States Navy when there was a huge exodus of people from Cuba and Haiti trying to come to the United States. They were coming here, they would have been coming here illegally, and it was a very dangerous proposition. On the bordering states of the United States of America and Mexico, for the states that border Mexico, there's a huge influx of illegal immigrants that always come into the country, and it's a very dangerous proposition for several reasons. One is physically it's dangerous. The terrain in which they try to come across is very dangerous, hazardous. There is reports of many deaths in the transition from Mexico to the United States, and so that's dangerous in itself. Also, when you understand who's at the border, so there's human sex traffickers, there's people that are kidnapped, that are held hostage by the drug cartels and by just bad people at the border. And so it's very dangerous bringing a child across the border. And so again, our laws in our country has traditionally, even with United States citizens, if they find that a parent or guardian has placed a child in danger, then it's standard policy that they take the child into custody, separate them from that parent or guardian until they can make the situation better. So this is not an odd thing. This is not a new thing. But also when you understand that the Obama administration, this was a law that was on the books during that time now. And so as I share constantly about the mainstream media and how they're just a tool and an extension of the New World Order, they paint these false narratives in a way to garner an emotional response. And so not even if you look at it from a legal standpoint, because we're a representative republic that's governed by the rule of law, which means we don't get to determine which laws we want to follow and which laws we don't. Just because we don't agree with a law doesn't mean that we don't follow that law, because we all have laws that we disagree with. Should we all just arbitrarily say, well, I don't agree with this law, so I'm not going to follow it? You think about the drug laws in the country. There's a lot of people that do drugs. Should they be able to say, well, I don't agree with the drugs should be illegal, so I'm not going to follow that law? We don't allow them to do that, and there's a consequence and a penalty that comes as a result of that. The speed limit, you know, in my neighborhood, it may be a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I can't just say, well, I don't agree with that. And when the cop goes to pull me over, I say, well, I don't agree with that law, so I shouldn't be punished because I don't think that law should be legal, right? We don't operate like that. And illegal immigration is a reason why that there has to be secure borders in the country. But when you understand the strategy and the agenda of the New World Order, they don't want sovereign nations. They don't want strong borders. They want weak borders, open borders, which allows to erode the country security-wise and culturally. And ultimately, these countries will be absorbed into this one world governmental system. So when we understand that that's the end game for the New World Order people, then we also have to begin to move backwards, to scale it back, to see how they are employing this strategy. And one of them is the open borders thing. So because the actual facts and the laws don't support the position of the globalists or the liberals, they have to use emotionalism. And so they use emotionalism to manipulate us. And so even though it's unsafe to bring a child across the border, even though it's illegal, which is why it's called illegal immigration, even though all the bordering states except for California want secure borders. I knew a gentleman who lived in Arizona, and he worked for the U.S. Border Patrol. And he shared with us how he was very effective at capturing drug smugglers and other people that were illegally coming across, other criminals that were coming across the border. And because of that, they targeted his house and they shot his house up once. And so he was very much in favor of securing borders. The bordering states, again, other than California, voted for President Trump, not because of racism, but because they agreed with him about securing the borders. And so we have to use common sense along with actual facts when we're looking at these issues, and we can't allow emotionalism to come into play. Because what emotionalism does is they'll show you one of the families that's hurt by, that's separated by this whole illegal immigration issue. And so they'll try to pluck at your heartstrings so that now you evacuate all common sense and you evacuate the legalities and the practicality of having a secure border, and you support just allowing anybody to come into the country. So it's no good for a country. It's no good for individuals. We have to be governed by the rule of law. And not only that, but what about the people who have gone through the process, who have been patient and spent money and resources and time to go through the process to become a naturalized citizen? It's very disrespectful to them. And one of the clearest strategies in destroying any nation is dissolving their secure borders and the culture that's around it, the nation. So these are very clear strategies that are being employed in this day and age, and the mainstream media is complicit to this. Not only that, but people of color have been so brainwashed and manipulated to the fact that we even support, because most black people, let's be honest, are Democrats. We've become liberal because Democrats are liberals for the most part. And so because of that, we kind of go along with the talking points. We go along with the narrative that's being fed to us, not understanding and realizing that illegal immigration hurts black people more than anything. And the Civil Rights Commission did a study, and they've come to they've been able to document the fact that illegal immigrants hurt African American males more than any group of people in the job force. And they estimated almost 2 million jobs were taken away from black males, and they're occupied by illegal immigrants. And again, this is all statistical facts. This is empirical data. And again, the liberal position on these things very rarely stand up to facts. It's always based on emotions. And if you just rely on emotions and you ignore facts and ignore data, then it's very easy to be manipulated. So we shouldn't be so quick to just listen to the narrative and allow these stories, this singular story that this family was torn apart by, by the U.S. Border Patrol. And at the end of the day, it's called illegal immigration because it is illegal. We are a nation of laws. We have to follow the laws that's on the books, and we can't decide and determine which laws are that we agree with or not. And ultimately, we can't allow the lies of the mainstream media to distract us, because they want you to believe that President Trump and his administration is are the people that came up with this policy. Now, and you know, from a non-hypocritical standpoint, I want people to think about, you know, there's a lot of people that really passionately supported Obama, especially people of color, and they are giving this feigned outrage about, you know, what's going on in the news, and tearing, it's so inhumane that these things are happening, and you know, if this law was on the books and President Obama actually supported it, and like I said, he asked for $2 billion of funding to support this law, these immigration laws, then where was the outrage then? You know, where was the outrage when it was the Obama administration? It's a clear indicator of identity politics and partisan politics. And what identity politics, for those of you who don't know, is identity politics means that because you know, people that want to manipulate and oppress you, they identify you with certain classes of people, and those classes of people are supposed to all hold the same political ideology. So if you're black, you know, identity politics says black people have to be Democrats and have to be liberals. And so you have this groupthink of everybody has to go along with it without even thinking. And so the only thing they need to do is say that a certain policy is a Republican policy or a conservative policy, and automatically black people shut it down without even going through the logic or examining the data behind the issue. And this is what we see here with this illegal immigration policy that's in place right now. The reason that I stress, again, black people and people of color is because of the impact that these things have on them. Globalism affects us more than anything. The strategies that the globalists have employed, really, black people are on the forefront of the negative consequences of these things. So illegal immigration, when you understand what that represents, you understand that we are the ones who are the lowest on the totem pole in these areas. Now, the real battles, you have to understand the real battle that's going on. Now, a lot of people are anti-Trump. They don't like Trump. They don't like his demeanor. I will say, just personally, that I don't like the fact that he uses profanity like he does. I don't like the fact that he insults people and calls them names. I think that sometimes he could say things differently, right? He's very crude and he's very uncouth in his approach many times. But at the end of the day, you have to realize the real battle is not between, it's not a racial battle. It's not between black and white people. It's not Mexicans and Americans. The real battle that's taking place is about, is globalism versus capitalism. Globalism versus capitalism. And whether you like Trump or not, he's a capitalist. He's not a globalist. I believe George W. Bush, not George H.W. Bush, was definitely a globalist, but George W. Bush, I think, was more of a capitalist and a patriot more than a globalist. So when we understand the nuances of this particular battle, it should put things in perspective. You know, there's an old saying, the enemy of my enemy can be my ally. And so whether or not you like President Trump or whether or not you agree with his approach to things, once you recognize the fact that he is anti-globalist in his agenda and his approach and in his rhetoric, then you should realize that he can be a great ally to helping our communities, to helping the things that we're trying to accomplish as a group, as a people. Because globalism doesn't, one of the strategies of globalism is to divide and conquer. So globalists will always pit races against each other. And just for the record, if you have, like I said, look through some of my videos and some of my teachings, there's actually no such thing as race. Black is not a race. It's a description. It's a color. Race is a construct that was created in order to divide people, to keep us separated. Because if you think about the fact that black is not a race, it's a description, it's a skin color. Really, even the Bible or even anthropologically, people should be separated or not separated or defined by cultures and regions.
You may think you know exactly what race you are, but how would you prove it if someone disagreed with you? The fact is, even though race drives a lot of social and political outcomes, race isn't real. One of the first people to attempt to categorize humans according to race was a German scientist around 1776. He came up with 5 different groups according to physical appearance and geographic origin of their ancestors. Americans of European descent eagerly bought into this type of thinking around the same time. Some historians have said the idea that there were different races helped them resolve the contradiction between a natural right to freedom and the fact of slavery. If whites were their own distinct category, then they could feel a lot better about denying freedom to people who they labeled black and decided were fundamentally different.
The reason that they created race, like I said, in order to separate us, because originally Europeans were not, it wasn't this amorphous group. So you had Italians, Irish, you had Great Britain, you had Germany, Russia, you had all these different European nations, and they didn't even identify with each other. So people from Southern Europe actually had a big problem with people from Northern Europe. So even Hitler and the Nazis, they were Aryans, and they looked at other European nations as being a less pure race than they were. So you have to understand the nuances of what's going on in order to keep from falling into this whole trap of divide and conquer that the globalists will kind of promote. But anyway, when we understand the fact that it's capitalism versus New World Order, and for the sake of the New World Order, I'm gonna mention the word communist, because communism and socialism are tools to push for a New World Order. Socialism, of course, is an economic is based on economics, whereas communism is economics and government that are hand in hand. The goal of socialism is communism, and the goal of communism is a one world governmental system. Now, why is it important for us to understand? Because communism doesn't create any wealth. Socialism doesn't create wealth. The only thing that socialism does and communism does is it takes the wealth from one group of people and transfers it to the masses. And why is that? The reason it's critical for us to understand that is because the media now even paints the picture as though capitalism is an evil thing. Now, there has been some abuses in regards to capitalism. There's a thing called corporatism, which I'm not a big fan of. Corporatism is a real problem because corporatism treats businesses and corporations the same as human beings. And so you run a risk that when you focus on corporatism, that there's a lot of abuses that happen to the average person. But capitalism is not a bad thing. A free market economy is not a bad thing. The government actually in a free market economy should only operate as a referee, which means they have to make sure that the playing field is equal. So you have antitrust laws and anti-monopoly laws, which means that one organization, one corporation shouldn't be so big and powerful and wealthy that it can squash competition. That's when the government steps in. But you have to realize that a free market economy in a capitalistic society promotes, it creates wealth, and it also provides for the best standard of living out of any country in the world. I'm going to say that again. A free market economy in a capitalistic society not only creates and generates wealth, but it actually promotes the best standard of living in the world. The United States has one of the highest standards of living in the world. And that's because of the free market economy and capitalism. So in capitalism, you have 3 groups of people. You have the governmental or the ruling elites, if you will, the wealthy, the high net worth individuals. You have the middle class, and you have the poor. Right? So our governmental system, which is a representative republic, a free market economy, is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people, which is why you have checks and balances. So you have a transfer of power from time to time. You have checks and balances where the government officials, to a certain degree, have to be held accountable or can be held accountable by the people. And you also have the government that keeps corporations in check so that they don't become so over oppressive and overbearing. Now, if any of you may or may not realize it, but whether it's a cell phone or whether it's cable television, many years ago, back in the late 70s and early 80s, where I live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, there was one cable company, and there was no competition. So you didn't have great customer service. The prices were whatever they wanted to charge you because there's no competition. When you have a free market economy and competition, It actually regulates the markets. It gives you higher customer service, and it brings prices down. Because when competition comes into play, so that one cable company that could do basically what they wanted to do, and you either took it or leave it, and because cable was not a necessity, it wasn't like water or electricity or anything like that, they could basically do whatever they wanted to do. But then you had other mediums come into place. You had cable, you have satellite TV, you have other things. Now you have internet that gives competition. So the cable companies have to bring their prices down or give you more for your money, and they have more customer service. So what does customer service say? We want to make sure nowadays when you get finished with a call, most companies now, they said, is there anything else I can do for you? Did we provide for your needs today? And that all comes from free market economy. If you take that away and you have socialism, which makes way for communism, then ultimately, instead of having the three classes of people, which is the ruling class or the wealthy and the governmental, let's say the wealthy, right? The ruling class. You have the middle class, which is the backbone of our economy, and then you have the poor. But when you transfer that from that type of governmental system and economic system to socialism or capitalism, it gets rid of the middle class. And now what happens is that ruling elite class or that governmental class becomes smaller and smaller. They have more power, and the rest of the people go into what's called the working class. But the working class ultimately becomes the poor, because socialism and communism don't create wealth. They don't create wealth. That's why these communist countries and these socialist countries now are becoming more westernized, because they understand Russia used to be the USSR. Right now they are allowing for the Western world to come in because they understand that socialism and communism does not create wealth. And what it does is, instead of the liberties that we are allowed, you have creativity. You have, production. And so one of the things that I hear President Trump saying is make America great again. And some people, because they don't really understand the overall dynamics of what's happening, they go back to racism, and it's all about racism. But what I would say to you is, I do remember in the 70s and the 80s when the United States had a thriving economy. Now, we did go through this, in the 70s, there was a great recession, during the Carter administration, and you had the gas prices or whatever. But if you look from the 50s on, America's economy was thriving. You had a thriving steel industry, whether it's Pennsylvania and Western PA, through what's called the Rust Belt, or whatever they call it. You had a thriving auto industry in Detroit. And, years ago, many people may not know this, but Detroit had one of the highest standards of living in the country because the auto industry was booming. And Detroit has a large minority population. So those are the type of things that happen in a free market economy. It creates wealth. You have ingenuity. You have people that are striving for excellence. So just like you have General Motors, then you have Ford and Dodge and Chrysler. Then the Europeans and the Japanese, they get into the mix, and they have competition to where they're driving each other to outperform each other. Those are the type of things that happen. If you transition into a socialism, to socialistic or communistic governmental system, then you don't have excellence. You don't have hard work and ingenuity being rewarded. It breeds complacency. So you don't have this excellence in those type of, because why would you? And think about this way. I heard an experiment years ago that there was this college professor who wanted to teach his class about socialism. So our normal academic environment dictates that if you get 100 on your test, you get an A, or sometimes they grade on a curve, which means whoever does the best gets an A, and then they judge accordingly. So in order for him to show about socialism and how socialism works, he said that everybody's going to get the same grade. So if you're an A student or if you're a D student, you get the same grade. Now, initially, A students were going to be A students because they're hardworking, they're smart, they're going to strive for excellence, and the D student's going to be a D student. But what happens is through teaching of this socialistic mindset, it didn't make the D student want to become an A student. It made the A student do worse because he's not being rewarded for hard work. That's what socialism and communism does. It actually destroys a nation from emotionally and spiritually, because the people no longer strive to do their best. Because even if you may not like it, or you may like it, in corporate America, for the most part, it rewards those who are the high achievers, and it creates not only those who are high achievers, but other people want to compete with them for the wealth, for the status and the fame and all those things that come. So anyway, you have to understand the difference between communism and capitalism, because that's what's at work here. So globalism is communism is a tool of the globalist New World Order. And so what they want to do is they want to get rid of sovereign nations, and they want to divide the nation into 10 sectors. And I'll show you a map of that. But if you guys recall H.G. Wells, was he wrote the book The War of the Worlds. He also wrote this book, The Open Conspiracy. He wrote this in 1928. And The Open Conspiracy was, he wrote it, describes his efforts to get the intellectuals to back the idea of a world social democracy and a new world order. And in 1940, that was published as well. He details the generation of struggle will be necessary to overcome the opponents such as global government. So I want to summarize this for you when we're talking about this. So the globalists, as the population of the world began to explode because of technology, because of medical breakthroughs, and also because of the industrialization age, which raised the standard of living throughout the world, that the population of the world started to boom. And so the people that are the globalists, they recognize that the larger the population was or is, the harder it was to control the masses. And so they had to come up with a way to limit the population of the world and to control those who are in the world. So how did they do that? So they came up with a strategy and how they were going to do that. And part of that is, and I talk about many of the other parts of the strategy throughout the 2019 movement, but part of that was to section the world off into sectors. And so they have these 10 sectors that they're sectioning off. And so the sector that we're in, North America, South America, and Central America, was supposed to be all one segment. And so you have things like NAFTA. NAFTA is one of the tools of the New World Order that allows the for a global economy. When you understand the TPP, the trade agreement TPP, which also was a way to help to create a global economy by the weakening of the U.S. economy. So you have President Trump, who gets into office, who is an anti-globalist, and he's a pure capitalist, a very very much a capitalist. So he started to speak against NAFTA and TPP. He started to speak out against the United Nations, which the United Nations is one of the tools of the New World Order. You had the League of Nations back in the days, which was after World War I, and then you had World War II. They really began to put this plan into place. You had the British imperialist Cecil Rhodes. Now, you may recognize the name Rhodes. That's where the name Rhodesia in Africa, the African nation, is named after him, because he was a globalist, right? And in Africa, you had these globalists that went into various parts of Africa and took over these countries. So Rhodesia was named after him. But also what's called the Rhodes Scholar Program in England. So, and you may be familiar with that term, Rhodes Scholar. Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, was a Rhodes Scholar. But Rhodes Scholars, basically, they come in and they get, allegedly they get indoctrinated into the globalist ideology. And so the Clintons were definitely globalists. Bill Clinton was a globalist, and if you look at some of his policies that were very much pushing towards the New World Order. Hillary Clinton is a globalist. She is like the poster girl for the globalists. And so when President Obama, who was also a globalist and who was run by the globalists, and just proof, like I said, I don't like to just give speculation, but George W. Bush was basically a tool or a puppet for the New World Order. And so Obama ran on hope and change, like he was going to do something completely different. but most of his cabinet members and most of his advisors all came from the same Wall Street globalist mindset.
What do you think the most important thing is for Barack Obama? Obviously, you're here to talk about the anniversary for U.S.-China diplomatic relations, but if you had to say this is going to be the country or the conflict or the place that will define the Obama administration, what would it be?
The president-elect is coming into office at a moment when there are upheavals in many parts of the world simultaneously. You have India, Pakistan, you have the jihadist movement. So he can't really say there is one problem that is the most important one. But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of him is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
That the presidents before him had. And so he was basically promoting the same agenda. And so they expected Hillary Clinton to win. And Hillary Clinton would have taken the New World Order agenda on steroids. She would just push it to the extreme, to the umpteenth degree. And so they expected her to win. And when she didn't win, they went into panic mode. And because they went into panic mode, and the mainstream media is an extension of the New World Order agenda, that they have been a all-out assault against the policies of President Donald Trump, even though when you look at the core of the New World Order strategy and you look at the policies of President Trump, most of his policies counteract the effects of the New World Order agenda. And so we have to have our eyes wide open. We can't continue to fall for the same old deceptions that we have fallen for year in and year out. Let me just share one or two of the strategies as they wrote it out. This is the policy. Mr. Gomberg, who was one of the people that helped to push this, Karl Marx was also globalist and some of these other people. But anyway, Gomberg was one of the framers of the strategy for the New World Order. Mr. Gomberg possibly took his cue from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who the Delano family was down with the Russell family, and they're globalists very much. You can look in some of my videos and I talk about the Delanos and some of the other families. But anyway, this is what he says. He quotes his own vision for the 10 sectors that the world's going to be separated in. As the USA, with the cooperation of the democracies of Latin America, the British Commonwealth of Nations, and the United Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, assumes world leadership for the establishment of a new world moral order for permanent peace, justice, security, and world reconstruction. Our policy shall be to fortify the political, economic unity in the Western Hemisphere of the USA, to promote and assist the unification of South America into a well-organized, democratic, federated United States of South America. So that's one segment. The USA, with its close cooperation of the United Nations of South America, the British Commonwealth of Nations, the USSR, and the World League of Nationalities, shall promote and assist in the unification of the relinquished territories and the areas at present unsoundly divided into well-organized, democratic, and absolutely demilitarized republics as approximately on the map. The areas known as the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Switzerland, France, Spain, Portugal, the island of Corsica, and eventually Italy, and the Isles of Sardinia and Sicily shall be unified as a demilitarized, federated United States of Europe. And the areas known as Sweden, Norway, Denmark shall be unified as the demilitarized, federated United States of Scandinavia. And so on. I'm not going to go all the way through it, but I just want you to understand that that's the strategy as they outlined it. So when you see these things happening in the news, when you see that they are an all-out attack against the open borders policy as part of their policy, trying to erode the sovereignty of the United States and make way for, you have Canada, United States, Mexico, and Central America as another region. We just have to have our eyes wide open and not fall victim to the strategies of the enemy. I'm going to show you some more clips as to how this is not a new policy. It's something they've been doing for a while. But anyway, I just pray that you have your eyes wide open and not to fall victim to the strategies of the enemy. I love you. Be blessed. Until next time, shalom.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat like they haven't seen before. This is not simply another four-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, and this will be our last chance to save it. This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy, but are in fact controlled by a small handful of global special interests rigging the system, and our system is rigged. This is reality. You know it, they know it, I know it, and pretty much the whole world knows it. The Clinton machine is at the center of this power structure. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global financial powers, her special interest friends, and her donors. Honestly, she should be locked up. The most powerful weapon deployed by the Clintons is the corporate media, the press. Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. Anyone who challenges their control is deemed a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe. They will lie, 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 and then again, they will do worse than that. They will do whatever is necessary. The Clintons are criminals, remember that. This is well documented, and the establishment that protects them has engaged in a massive cover-up of widespread criminal activity at the State Department and the Clinton Foundation in order to keep the Clintons in power. They knew they would throw every lie they could at me and my family and my loved ones. They knew they would stop at nothing to try to stop me. Nevertheless, I take all of these slings and arrows gladly for you. I take them for our movement so that we can have our country back. I knew this day would arrive. It's only a question of when. And I knew the American people would rise above it and vote for the future they deserve. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. Our great civilization has come upon a moment of reckoning. I didn't need to do this, folks, believe me. I built a great company, and I had a wonderful life. I could have enjoyed the fruits and benefit of years of successful business deals and businesses for myself and my family, instead of going through this absolute horror show of lies, deceptions, malicious attacks. Who would have thought? I'm doing it because this country has given me so much, and I feel so strongly that it's my turn to give back to the country that I love. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
The emails released by WikiLeaks have shed light on Clinton's paid speeches for the first time and contain a number of politically damaging quotes. In a speech to Goldman Sachs, she admitted she is out of touch with middle-class Americans because of the wealthy lifestyle that she and her husband now enjoy. Publicly, though, Clinton's been sounding a different tune.
The middle class is the social and economic engine of our country.
In another notable speech, she talked about how she was going to make sure those on Wall Street continue to prosper. That's despite repeatedly stressing her support for Main Street.
We've got to make sure that Wall Street never wrecks Main Street again, and we will.
In those paid speeches, Clinton also touched on foreign affairs, including on the conflict in Syria. She said establishing a no-fly zone there would kill a lot of Syrians because the US would have to take out the government's air defenses, many of which are located in populated areas. But the possible civilian casualties is not something that Clinton brings up publicly.
I do still support a no-fly zone because I think we need to put in safe havens for those poor Syrians who are fleeing both Assad and ISIS.
Let's stay on
and have
national
some place
security.
that
Stand
they
by.
can be safe.
Hillary Clinton has also made some harsh comments about America's closest ally in the Middle East, accusing Saudi Arabia of being the biggest exporter of extremist ideology. This, however, hasn't stopped her from taking in millions of dollars in campaign donations from the kingdom. The stark contrast between what Clinton says in her public and private speeches is also explained in the leaked emails. She claims that she needs both a public and a private position to be a successful politician. During the presidential campaign, Clinton had repeatedly been pressed to release the transcripts of her private speeches to institutions like Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, and Morgan Stanley.
If there is nothing in those speeches that you think would change voters' minds, why not just release the transcripts and put this whole issue to bed?
And Clinton's made quite a fortune from those speeches, $22 million to be precise, with more than half of the money coming from trade groups and financial institutions. But that's what they offered, right?